You were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have. All I can say is that if you get this, stay away.
Hello and welcome back to Should I Buy Games. Today I'll be talking about the latest entry in the acclaimed Resident Evil series, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Resident Evil has taken a short break to go back to the drawing board since the lackluster reception of recent entries. Its turn towards action-oriented gameplay turned many fans away and had people clamoring for the survival horror days of old. Fortunately, the fans both old and new have something to enjoy here, as Resident Evil 7 learns from the series' heritage to make its first foray into the first-person perspective a truly unique and harrowing experience. Horror games seem to have turned a corner in the last 5 years, with games like Outlast and Amnesia focusing on making you feel helpless to the horrors around you to create this sense of dread and panic. It's extremely effective, and both aforementioned games are fantastic in their own right, but this current trend had many longtime fans worried that we would get a half-assed ripoff of what's hot in the horror genre. The first hour or so of Resident Evil 7 would make you think Capcom was taking the series in that direction. The claustrophobic, tense opening is, in fact, very reminiscent of the early hours of Outlast or even PT, and hopefully that doesn't turn people away because the rest of the game is something to behold. You play as Ethan, a faceless, generally uninteresting protagonist in search of his long-missing wife. He takes off to find her in the bayous of Louisiana after receiving a message 3 years after her disappearance. This leads you to the eventual capture by the frighteningly kooky Baker family, who make up the main cast of villains in the game. Ethan may be a boring hero, but the Bakers will individually go down as some of the more charismatic and memorable Resident Evil enemies in the series. Jack is a powerhouse that stalks the main part of the house as you scavenge for ammo and other supplies. You can hear him off in the distance, opening and closing doors, as well as dragging his shovel through the hallways. It creates an overall sense of dread as you never feel safe at any particular moment, as Jack could be just around the corner. Marguerite, on the other hand, who prowls the old house back in the swamps, is much slower and methodical. This creates a more slow and steady type gameplay, as it is better just to run and hide when she comes in sight. Finally, there is Lucas, who creates sadistic games, such as the ones you'd find in a Saw movie. Each villain has their unique playstyle that breaks the game into different chunks, consistently making you change the way you play to adapt to every new, hair-raising situation. The Baker family may be fascinating, but the star of Resi 7 is the Baker Manor, as most of the time you'll be scrounging through every corner of every room to find the items necessary to survive. This is where the game reveals that it is undoubtedly Resident Evil. At first, the majority of the house is closed off, but is slowly opened up as you receive different key types to open their respective doors. There are various puzzles that are reminiscent of Resi that lock away many secret passages. Early in the game, as I hunted for ammo and herbs, I felt completely powerless to fight the enemies off around me. I dreaded using any bit of ammo, and consistently found myself backtracking to see if I had missed any item that would be useful in crafting another clip. The combining system is one of the more interesting aspects of Resident Evil 7's gameplay loop. Many combinable items have multiple uses, so deciding whether to use them to craft more ammo or medicine to heal is a fun, consistent decision you have to make, as it consistently comes back to bite you in the butt. Guns in Resident Evil 7 are your main way of fighting off the monsters around you. Your arsenal starts small but becomes vast by the end of the game, allowing you to change on the fly between a shotgun and a pistol. Every gun feels unique and fun to use, as there is nothing more satisfying than the first time you take a shotgun to one of your enemy's heads and see it burst before your eyes. Aiming definitely takes a little getting used to, as it doesn't exactly feel right in comparison to other first-person shooters, but that didn't subtract much from my overall gameplay experience. The aforementioned sense of item scarcity and dread slowly dissipates as the game goes, turning the game's latter fourth into something entirely different. No longer did I feel desperate. I'd become a gun-toting brute able to take on whatever horrors came my way. The game turns a sharp corner into the over-the-top where I felt empowered, and it's super effective. It was a nice change of pace that had me sprinting into the conclusion of the game as I desperately ran to the end to see what twists and turns were next. What awaited me was something extremely rewarding, and as the credits rolled, I felt this true sense of accomplishment as I'd overcame my childlike fear that generally prevents me from playing many horror games. So the game is great, but as many of you have heard, it takes around 8 to 10 hours to complete. I clocked in at around the 9-hour mark. For me, that's the perfect length, because if it had gone any longer, I could see any particular section of Resident Evil 7 getting tired. No Area 6 are on too long, but it's a very slippery slope here. As someone who works 40 hours a week on top of being a full-time college student, this 9-hour runtime is a huge selling point for me. For completionists, there's tons to enjoy here, as the game comes packed with some fantastically designed trophies that are challenging and making you play the game in new and interesting ways. As well as trophies, upon completion of the game, you unlock Madhouse Mode, which is an extremely difficult trudge through the game. With all that being said, I can understand why 9 hours of gameplay might not be worth it for some. For those in that boat, waiting for a price cut to at least $40 is a safe bet for you to feel that you've gotten your money's worth. For me, Resident Evil 7 was a masterclass in survival horror that takes pride in its fantastic sense of pace and scale. For new and old fans alike, the future looks bright. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is a buy. What did you think of Resident Evil 7? Do you agree? Disagree? Why? Leave a comment below and tell me what you think. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, be sure to click that subscribe button. And remember, let me waste money so you don't have to.